We're flying across the skies as Atari Archive looks into Planet Patrol and Gangster Alley. July 1982 is notable as the demarcation of when the home video game market was simply hot and when everybody else started jumping into the game. We have new consoles being announced, and if you were lucky, coming out in your neighborhood, and a slew of new third-party publishers releasing games on home consoles. Such is the case with today's duo of titles, coming to us from new VCS publisher Spectravision. Spectravision has a storied history with home computers and video games, and it's worth overseeing both aspects of their business. Helpfully, a person named Roger Sandel has been working on a history of the company on his website, which I'll be referencing here in some detail. Founded in 1981 by watchmakers Harry Fox and Oskar Hutzeler, Spectravision was initially focused on, surprise, home computer publishing. The company didn't really make products in-house, but rather served as a distributor in the same vein as, say, Broderbund or Electronic Arts did at the time. The company's first products started releasing to stores in 1982, including games for the VCS and Commodore's VIC-20 computer and the QuickShot ergonomic controller. Over the course of the following year, they added the ColecoVision to their publishing ranks, and even produced the CompuMate, a full computer expansion for the VCS. Spectravision is also probably best known as the original source of the MSX standard with their computer line, the SV318 and SV328, a variation with more memory and CP/M support. These computers were reasonably capable for their time, and even featured a ColecoVision adapter to run games for that similar hardware platform. According to Samdil, the Japanese computer company ASCII's president Kei Nishi wanted to set a global standard for computer hardware, something Spectravision agreed to, and they fully licensed the hardware technology to Microsoft in 1984, giving birth to the MSX standard, with which the SV328 is similar to but ultimately incompatible with. Its successor computer, the SVI-728, on the other hand, is a fully compatible MSX1 that unfortunately never made it to the then calcifying US consumer computer market, which by 1985 had effectively winnowed down to the Commodore 64 and the Atari 8-bits. But we are getting very ahead of ourselves. Here in 1982, Spectravision was going in big on video games, planning well over half a dozen releases in time for the holidays, and the company kicked things off with a horizontal shooter and a shooting gallery. Nothing earth-shattering, though the company did put some interesting spins on these two games. Unfortunately, we have no information on who developed either of them, and therefore no insight into their creation or how Spectravision ended up publishing them. To its credit, Planet Patrol tries to set itself apart on a console that is increasingly seeing a lot of space shooters pop up. According to the manual, you've been recalled from leave to defend the planet Spectra from the TIAs, a cute reference to the VCS's TIA chip that handles the video and audio for the console. The game tasks you with destroying 3 missile launch bases in each wave, but to reach them you first have to navigate through a swarm of drone missiles and heat-seeking torpedoes. In practice, these are enemies that you can destroy in the case of the missiles, and small shots to avoid with the torpedoes. After a certain amount of time has passed, you'll encounter a black-downed craft that holds a friendly pilot that you can rescue for bonus points, followed by 3 missile bases themselves. You need to destroy all 3 before hitting the shield in front of them, or else you will need to start the level over again. The bases shift location based on where you are on screen when they spawn in, a fact that you can use to your advantage to group them all together. Destroy the bases, and the screen fills up with debris that you also need to avoid. And unfortunately, this debris can end up in arrangements that are rather difficult to navigate. But should you make it through, you'll come to a landing strip. Line yourself up, and the ship will land automatically, where you get a little animation of a truck refueling you for another level. If you fail to land, you don't get topped up, and will have to take on the next stage with whatever you have left in the tank, as indicated in the bottom right. Having multiple objectives to each wave is certainly unusual for a VCS shooter of this era, though you could find arcade games like Pleiades or Gorf making attempts at it. What makes Planet Patrol particularly interesting is that it also includes a day-night cycle. Certain stages will see the sun go down and the moon rise, and in the process render the entire playfield in darkness. The only way to actually see what's coming at you is to fire your laser, which will light up the screen momentarily. It's a very cool idea, though there isn't really anything stopping you from rapid firing other than the sound effect getting annoying. As for game options, The difficulty switches adjust the vertical size of your ship, making it harder to avoid getting hit, while the cartridge includes a regular game and an easy one for children in both 1 and 2 player varieties. In practice, the kids game doesn't actually feel all that slower or easier. Planet Patrol has good ideas, and it is pretty fun, but it also has some problems with its implementation. The primary one comes down to the end stage sequences. If you stick to the bottom of the screen, the missile bases will always spawn in the bottom 3 positions, giving you a pretty good window to destroy them all successfully. So that bit of cheese makes that segment a bit easier to deal with, but there's no real help for the debris field, and sometimes it seems to come up with a pattern that is simply impassable. The most frustrating thing in this game is getting through the entire stage only to brush up against a piece of debris and lose a life. Similarly, the game is very much balanced around the B difficulty ship size, and when you're at A difficulty, you really have so little room to maneuver that it exacerbates the debris issue, as well as makes the initial missile dodging phase unreasonably bothersome as well, depending on how the attacks shake out. There's nothing here that makes me claim Planet Patrol is bad, but it is a bit lacking compared to recent releases from Activision, Imagic, and Parker Brothers. The missile attack phase really needs something else to keep things interesting, and frankly so does the missile base section. If that would have required losing the debris field, I think that would have been fine. Oddly enough, Spectravision released another game called Planet Patrol on their SV318 computer, but this was a Zaxxon-style game rather than the horizontal shooter attempted here. Reviewers seem to feel Planet Patrol was on the better side of things. Aside from picking out the unusual right-to-left orientation of the action, Video Game Update wrote that its average graphics and play would likely get boring after a while. Electronic Games' own review, penned by Bill Kunkel and Arnie Katz, was largely positive, as they wrote that while the graphics and sound aren't the most sophisticated, there's enough happening in the game that you won't really notice, adding that it was a solid release from Spectravision and hopefully a sign of things to come. A writer for Video Game's own piece on the title was similarly positive, calling it Aces, while Electronic Fun with Computers and Games gave it A rankings for both graphics and playability. Spectravision's other July release, Gangster Alley, is unfortunately visually impressive, but overall a weaker package, seemingly designed for small children and only small children. Here you are contending with a group of mobsters wanted by the Spectravision Bureau of Investigation, holed up on their turf in Gangster Alley, holding some people hostage. You've got a rifle and some spare ammunition and have to keep the gangsters from attacking you while also avoiding shooting the hostages. Each villain has their own point value, while shooting a hostage deducts 1,000 points from you. If this setup sounds a bit familiar, you may be thinking of Hogan's Alley, the NES light gun game based on police training courses, or similarly Nintendo's Wild Gunman, either the NES release or the 1970s Projector coin-op game. This is very much based on target shooting games that were popular even before the advent of video games, with gangsters and hostages slowly popping up out of the windows for you to shoot at and in turn get shot at if the gangsters fully reveal themselves for long enough. If they shoot you, you lose a life, though you do get restocked on ammunition. And finally on the rooftop you have Nitro Ed, who moves back and forth and randomly pulls out a bomb that he will throw at you. You need to shoot Ed before he throws the bomb, or it'll instantly end the game, and leave you with an animation of him laughing at you that unfortunately does not play nice with my capture card. Making it through a wave, and your remaining ammunition is counted up for points, and the window placement of the building is shifted around. Sometimes you have to deal with a nighttime wave where the windows are only lit up momentarily when you fire, similar to Spectravision's other game, Planet Patrol. On the flip side, while you have limited ammo, the screen stays lit for far longer here, so it isn't too difficult to manage. There's also a 2-player mode, in case you can get someone else to sit down with you on this one. What makes Gangster Alley harder to recommend, ultimately, is that when the difficulty tops out, it remains pretty easy. You may be using the joystick to move the cursor around, and the difficulty switch adjusts how quickly it moves. But the mobsters and the hostages rise up out of the windows incredibly slowly, even when the game is coming at you full force. Nitro Ed also always takes an eternity to finally throw his bomb, giving you a ton of time to get up there even from the bottom of the screen. Later in the game you do have much more limited ammunition and can really only afford to miss a couple shots, but even if you run out, it's likelier that you'll get shot before Ed can throw a bomb and end your run. This all seems fine for the children's mode, but just like Planet Patrol, there doesn't seem to be any appreciable difference between it and the standard game. If the enemies came out faster or fired more quickly, then this game would remain a challenge, but as it stands, it eventually just gets boring. but there are quite a few people online who seem to be willing to go to bat for the game, based on comments from Atari Age. Gangster Alley saw some pretty middling reviews compared to Planet Patrol. Electronic Games Arcade Express newsletter was pretty tersely noted its visuals were on par for the VCS, while Video Game Update gave it 2 stars for graphics and 2.5 for play, indicating that the graphics become boring on repeated plays and ultimately not recommending it. Video Games and Video Game Update both allude to it being a good choice for small kids, though the former's reviewer amusingly suggested that the game required too rapid of reflexes for them. Electronic Fun with Computers and Games gave it a B for graphics and a C for the actual gameplay. Evidently, Spectravision got behind this game, however, as the company's early TV advertising plans included a promo spot specifically highlighting it, though I haven't come across any surviving footage of this one. Gangster Alley did make a reappearance of sorts in the late 80s under the name Task Force, published by Froggo Games circa 1989. Froggo didn't really sell anything unique, but rather region-specific or graphical ROM hacks of existing VCS titles, and Gangster Alley was among them. Whether or not this was actually a licensed game or an out-and-out bootleg is a bit unclear, but it does match up closely with the known bootleg of Gangster Alley called Mafia, released in PAL territories. But while the visuals are only similar, the game itself plays the same. Whether or not that's a good thing is up to how much you like Gangster Alley. The main thing I will give Task Force over Gangster Alley is that it will sometimes require you to let gangsters rise up all the way in a window, as the civilians now look identical to a couple of your enemies, save for the fact that they aren't holding guns. Spectravision, which will eventually change its name to Spectravideo due to a naming conflict with the on-command hotel TV system by the same name, will publish some genuinely interesting games for the VCS, as well as some that are rather infamous for varying reasons. But this is an inauspicious start for the company. Neither of these games are as fussy or feel as slapdash as some of those from games by Apollo, in fairness, but they both really could have used some more tweaking to really shine. Next time, we're trading in our rifle for some anti-air turrets.